So why don't we first, Mr. Crane is going to take us through an oldie but goodie and one of the most incredible examples of a single object on the Atari 2600 that anybody has ever seen.
Yeah, even back when I was at Atari, we were doing things that the Atari 2600 was never meant to do. In fact, I was working on something when I felt a presence behind me, and I turned around, and it was Jay Miner, the designer of the TIA chip. And he was just shaking his head and frowning. And I said, "So, Jay, what's up?" And he said, "What you're doing up there, I had no idea my chip could do that." So we were doing things that the designers of the chip had no idea that it could be done. And that's how we were able to make the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games, because the Atari 2600 was really designed by Atari to do Tank, which came out in the combat cartridge, and Pong. Two of their arcade games. They wanted to put both of them, they wanted to sell a separate cartridge for both of them once you've bought the machine. So, and in Pong, you've got the two paddles and a ball. And in Tank, you've got two tanks shooting a missile at each other with a blocky playfield to get in your way. So when I'm often asked, what is your favorite game, the favorite game you ever did, I often do come back to Grand Prix because it was the hardest. It was the hardest and the trickiest that I had to do to make this happen, and I'm going to show you how it happened. Right arrow did not work.
Did you break something?
I don't know. Okay.
There you go now.
I have to click on the little arrow over here.
I don't know why.
So this is Grand Prix, in case you haven't played it or seen it. And it's basically a gray racetrack. And one of the funniest things I've learned between this and Freeway is that two of the most colorful games I ever did were on a gray background. And everybody at Atari used to make purple and magenta and chartreuse and all these different funny colors in their games to try to make their games colorful. And I learned that you do the gray background and then the colors just pop. And that's why one of the reasons Grand Prix looks so good. So it's done in strips. You can see that there's bushes at the top, and those bushes are moved to simulate motion. And you've got your car, which is the middle one, and I think it's the red one in this case, and four bands of other cars that become your enemies. So, brief tutorial of the Atari 2600 and what it's capable of. Basically, at its highest resolution, you get 100 pixels across, 160 pixels across. That's the highest resolution. And there's only two 8-bit moving objects that can be on any given scan line, and three 1-bit objects, which are the missiles for each tank, and the ball was a separate one, had a little extra capability. The playfield blocks are all 4 pixels per bit, and there's only 40 of them. There's really only 20 of them, and they either get repeated or reflected, but that's neither here nor there. Just think of it as being 4 pixel blocks. And it had 128 bytes of RAM, all of which was erased when you turned it off. So there was no memory. That's why this comic, which is one of my favorites, is absolutely true, that the Atari 2600 has no memory. And the other thing is, the way the hardware was written is, if you are moving an object across the screen and it hits the right edge and goes 1 pixel past the right edge, you actually see that pixel show up on the left edge. There's an actual wraparound of the hardware images. And that wraparound killed this game. It made this game almost impossible. So let's just look at some pictures I have done before. So to do this kind of thing, you do it in bands. There's the score band, and then there's the playfield band, and then there's, I guess that's the end for combat. And the 8-bit object gets moved into place, where you can see there. It's on the left side of the screen. It's been moved into place prior to the screen starting, and it stays there. And then you're writing a loop that runs continuously, synchronous with the TV scan line, and you write a bunch of zeros to the object, and then you start writing a ROM pattern that you have that shows what a tank looks like, and then you write a bunch of zeros afterward. And the way you vertically position it is by writing fewer zeros at the top before you start putting out the actual ROM image. So its horizontal position is in hardware and it's fixed. And then you can make an object show up anywhere in that vertical band. Then there's a missile, and the ball isn't even affected here. So if you think about it, it's not a bitmap, it's a line bitmap. It's a single line bitmap, one set of pixels, one horizontal set of pixels. And it's not even all that, because you can only control 8 of them for player 0, 8 of them for player 1, and the 3 1-bit objects. And then by the time the TV scan line comes around again, you have to change all those, or else it just looks like vertical stripes. And in fact, if you ever unplugged a game from the 2600, you would see nothing but vertical stripes that were left over right where the program stopped when it was removed. Those are the values left, and it just repeats them all the way down. So yeah, I mean, you think, oh, if you got a bitmap, you can draw just about anything, right? Well, no, this is not a bitmap.
What if you have 192 bitmaps?
It's not even a whole line of data.
All in 1/60th of a second.
So you write blanks, and then the graphics from the ROM, obviously it's an 8-bit word in the ROM, and so that's just a bit pattern that looks like a tank. Then you make 8 of them so that they look like the tank can rotate, and you just decide in code which ROM table you're going to use. And then the zeros continuing. Now, very quickly, the genius programmers at Atari, even before I got there, did Air-C Battle. Now, what Air-C Battle does, same thing. It's got that score at the top, and then it's got the play field. But if you see what they did was they took one of the player objects, and remember, it can exist in a horizontal position. In between these lines of color, they positioned it to a different place, then to a different place, then to a different place. And then the ROMs that were being shown, the ROM images, represented different types of planes going different directions. But by repositioning that down the screen, and just remember, picture that tank again, it's this whole column. Well, you write that column and you put a bunch of different graphics in it, and then you move it in between where the zeros are, and now it looks like separate images. All of a sudden, you can put a bunch of different images. Like with Freeway, I've got 10 lanes of traffic, and that's done using just one of these by positioning it in different places.
So think of one tall paper towel, piece of cardboard, and you cut and shift, cut and shift, cut and shift, and it's all really just one object. But by having blanks above and below each graphic image, you vertically separate them and they look like a bunch of objects.
Now, when Joe DeCure designed this part of the chip, he envisioned, like in Tank, that you would position that column and leave it there. Because there's only 2 tanks, so you would just have them in 2 different places. As they slowly move, you reposition them into different places. But he did that, and so he didn't even notice that the hardware, when it does that reposition, it turns off the video output for the first 8 pixels of a scan line, and it turns them to 0 as black. And so you see those little glitches along the left edge of the screen. That shows where that position actually occurred. And again, it turns off the graphics, which is a bad thing. It makes those ugly glitches. Well, actually, we use the fact that it turns off the image in other ways later. So anyway, it was very quickly that they figured out how to do a bunch of different screens. Oops. This is a video. Oh. Just as an aside, when you're firing from the downside, you're using the 2 missiles, which, incidentally, in the hardware, the missiles are the same color as the player. So you see that the orange player shoots an orange missile and the green player shoots a green missile. And you'd see that in Tank as well. You could see which missile was whose based on its color. And that's actually tied into the hardware. You don't have a separate missile color, you have the player color, and the missile's the same color as the player.
So you can see what they were thinking. Here's a tank, here's a bullet.
Yes, exactly. So Then, while Joe was doing this thing, he said, if I just move these two wires, I can actually generate multiple copies of that same thing. So in Gary's analogy, it's multiple rolls of paper towel that can be 2 of them close together, 2 of them far apart, 3 of them close together. You see the pattern. And a combination of, I'm going to put each pixel out twice, so it's twice as wide, or 4 pixels per bit. And you'll see if you play combat and you go out to way to the later levels, you're going to see what they call squadrons of biplanes, which are the 3 biplanes flying together. They have the same graphics. If you watch them, they all animate the same, and they are at a fixed relation to each other because it's just this little trick in the hardware that makes that work. If he hadn't done that trick, the Atari 2600 would have been dead in 1979 because of all the things that we ended up doing using that trick. So you got a squadron, or you've got, I think they called the other one the bomber. I use those terms later, so it's if you're using multiple copies of an object, it's using the squadron effect. And if you're making objects bigger horizontally, it can be either 2 bits per pixel or 4 bits per pixel, 4 pixels per bit,
Right.
or 2 pixels per bit of the graphics. So, I mean, that's the tutorial. Looking at Grand Prix, as I mentioned, we tended to work in bands. So we would write a program that puts out a yellow band and waits 12 lines. Okay? That was what you see here, this yellow line. Although in actuality, while I'm in that band, I'm loading graphics from a table to make those bushes. And if you notice, there's a lot of bushes there. We only have 2 objects. Well, they are exactly equidistant apart, so that if I have these 3 players and these 3 players, I get that many equidistant bushes. And I can move those and then do this and this and this.
And you may have seen that in a few 2600 games. Most recently, in Casey's Gold with the cactus.
Yeah.
Cactus and the railroad ties.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nothing moves in a game. It's a single screen. Nothing moves in this game, but we give you the impression of motion and the speed by how fast I move those bushes. Simple as that. So the same thing happens with the cars, as we'll see later, is your car does not move in Grand Prix. Your car is on the left edge and going up and down. Because for you guys, it's over here. And the only way it appears that we're moving is because the opposing cars are moving backwards at a speed that's relative to the difference between our 2 speeds. So we're doing the math in there. We're calculating the different speeds between there. But it's the same thing. It's the appearance of motion. It's fake. I do the road. I'm going to call your attention to something here. Garry asked the question, or mentioned the question, is so often, since the beginning of Activision, we were asked, why do your games look so much better than Atari's games? And I noticed it once when I was at a trade show and I was walking around Atari's booth, and all of these things were just this confusing mass of colors. Like I said, purples and magentas. And I love the colors that the Atari 2600 can make, but it makes some really ugly ones. And Atari was using them all just to be, for variation or whatever. Well, at Activision, we said, there's a good green, there's a good blue, there's a good red, and a really nice yellow, and black. And we tended to just keep to those colors, some shading of them, but whatever. That's why these things generally look so good. But I had also learned in my engineering about early television camera tube called an image orthicon, which generates black halo around every colored object. And it got eliminated replaced by the Vidicon, 30, 40, 50 years ago. But you see what that does is that makes a sharp color delineation between the yellow where the bushes are and the gray where the world is. And to do that, I just took one extra scan line, turned the color of background to black, waited a line, and continued. Started moving on. So creating a black line demarcation between the colors was one of the things that you don't know why it looks so good, but now you do. You see this very crisp delineation between changes in color on the TV screen. So then I wrote this loop of, I think it's 4, right? 4 loops showing the enemy cars and using one of the player objects, and my car, the red one, using the other one. The red one can move up and down. The other 4 are stuck in their rows.
Now, speaking as if I was not a programmer and I was looking at that, this is where he's gone off the rails right here. You mean to tell me that each of those 4 cars is one 8-bit object?
Yes.
That is complete and utter insanity. So he'll explain how.
You'll understand how it was done at some point here soon. So another black line, another yellow line, another bunch of bushes. And then we always have to have some sort of a GUI in a game. So I put in the time, so that's running starts at 0 and runs up. And when you reach the end, what is your time? And you take a picture of the screen and you send it into Activision. And if it's a low enough number, they send you a patch for free.
But I heard they stopped doing that recently, so don't send in any pictures now.
They were owned by Microsoft.
That's right.
It got hard.
And I ran out of room for the rest of the GUI that I wanted, so I modified the Activision kernel, which I wrote the first one anyway, and I put a number in it. That's your game. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can have game select. Right? The only reason it's repeated here, but so we got these glitches. Let's look at the screen real closely. Look at the left edge of the screen. The glitches are because I'm repositioning the second player to be these 4 cars. That 8-bit player, it's got to be repositioned. And we know that there's a glitch when we do repositioning. But you'll also notice the wraparound, which is the technical term that was used back then, is every pixel that runs off the right side of the screen shows up immediately on the left side of the screen. And you'll see it in combat. Jet planes will just fly across the screen and then everything is done. And when there's 3 of them, it comes and one of them shows up over here, then 2 of them, then 3 of them, because it's just exactly wrapping around at the 160 pixel boundary. So that's a problem, and we'll deal with that later. But we hated those glitches in the first place. And so what we actually did was we repositioned every object 0 amount every scan line. All right, so it's not moving, but the reposition hardware is executing, and so it fills in the glitches.
So if you can't get rid of the ugly lines, put them on every line, and you get rid of the ugly lines.
Yeah.
I always thought that was one of the most brilliant things Activision ever did, because you look at it and you go, where the hell are the lines?
Yeah.
They're there.
However, some people do notice. They say, why are all Atari 2600 games shifted to the right?
Right.
Because they are. They're this extra black boundary line. But better than that, where's the front end of the yellow car?
It's gone.
It's gone because it's not just being covered up. The display circuitry in the TIA chip is off. It cannot display anything during those 8 pixels. So yes, we do wrap around, but we wrap around with an 8-pixel guard band. So we can mess with that. So now if we wanted to, if we had an 8-bit object, we could run that 8-bit object off the screen and it would be showing up behind those glitches. And then when the 159th pixel disappears, we turn it off. We stop it. And so it moves smoothly off the screen. That's great. We can now do this. We can now move both directions off the screen because if we go off the left edge, it wraps around to the right, but the right doesn't have, for vice versa. It basically, you can hide an 8-bit object behind 8 pixels of off display hardware. Great. Doesn't work for these things though.
Partially works.
It partially works. It helps.
Yes, it definitely helps.
So now, how do we make that Grand Prix car that you just looked, memorize the blue car? It's got front and back tires, thicker in the back. It's got a racing stripe down the middle. It's got shading on the body. It even has a little white for silver axle. Okay? So how do we make that out of an 8-bit object? Well, what we do is, if you remember that squadron effect with those multiple copies and the width effect that they used in the bomber thing, we changed those parameters on every scan line. So now I can have an object that it's 8 bits, but it's being repeated twice. And then on the very next line, it's 8 bits, but it's 4 pixels per bit. And so we're changing that on every single scan line. So this is the ROM image for that car. This is what it looks like. It's only 8 bits. There's no magic going on. It's just 8 bits.
Change new size.
But you change the size. And so this car starts out with a new size of single copy. He's using the term new size, which Garry will use later, I guess. Then we do it the double. So if you notice, that tiny little wheel in the front is actually the exact same pixels as the inner half of the large tire in the back. Okay? And those holes will come into play later. Then we change the size to quad, so that every bit is 4 pixels, and so it'll go out 32. And same thing, reverse this whole sequence, 2 and then 1, and there's that car, right? All made from that one ROM image, plus another table you don't see, which is which duplicate, which new size, which width, whatever. So at the same time that we're writing graphics and new size, and, well, we also write color. So that's where you get this image, same ROM, 2 more tables, or another table, which is the color table. And I can shade the body, I can put a racing stripe on it. This is something we had to do all the time, we hated it. I couldn't put a cockpit, like make it black or brown or red or whatever. It's just a non-bit, and it shows the background through. Still, they look pretty cool. They look like these beautiful, big, beautiful cars out of an 8-bit object. So now we got holes in the tires because we want to simulate moving tires. And one of the things that we learned very early in 8-bit images is the best animation is a 3-frame animation. If one pixel moves, if you animate and you move it left and right, if you move left and then right, then left and right, it'll just go like this, right? But if you move the 0, the blank in there, you move it 1 pixel this way and 1 pixel that way, and then loop back, it will look like a continuous thing. And so this is a different table showing here on the left, because everything is the same pretty much, except different holes in the tire. And when you end up animating, you can animate them either direction. You can make it look like it's moving forward or backward by cycling between those 3 different tables. Okay, so now this is great. This looks like I can do a car in the middle of the screen, and everything is wonderful. It's got color, it's got new size, it's got animations and everything. But for this game to work, the car has to be able to go smoothly off the screen. If it goes faster than you, it goes off the screen to the right. And if it's slower than you, it has to smoothly go off the screen to the left. And we already knew we could do that with an 8-bit object, but how do we do it with a 32-bit object? Because if, as you saw in the first yellow car, if it goes off the edge, it's going to show up over here long before it disappears over there. You're going to see it on both sides.
So the 8-bit guard band only helps to some extent when you have a 32-bit wide object.
So now we get really nuts. What we do is we create 8 different cars. And these are slightly different because, well, if you look at the one top right, it only has to show the nose of the car. Well, it's only 8 pixels wide, so it can be completely invisible. and then you can see it 1 pixel at a time. So I can use that frame to show 8 movements of the car coming on to the left side of the screen. And then as soon as it goes past 8, I switch to the one below it. And now 8 pixels of it are being hidden, and you see exactly the 8 pixels of the front of the car, and now you see 9 pixels, 10 pixels, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then I change to the next one, and then I change to the next one. So the ones on the right are when it's coming onto the screen from the left, it shows its nose and then the rest of the car. The ones on the left are a car going off the edge, where I truncate the nose. And each one of those tables has to be different because it's changing. I mean, if you look at the top left on the body, it has a bunch of pixels for the whole width of the car, but then I truncate some of those pixels because I don't want a nose on the car. So I had to figure out every place where I needed to have the 4 pixels, the double pixels, the multiple copies. Oh, and in fact, if you look, third one down on the left, it has just a rear tire. So it doesn't even have that extra small piece that's the front tire showing up. So
It's like you took a saw and cut off the part of the car which you don't want to be visible.
So to do that required 8 completely different cars, each one having a table of graphics, a table of sizes, and a table of colors. All right, so we've got those 3 tables times 8. We're now at 24 tables. But if we want to animate, we have to have 3 pictures of every single one of those. Well, actually, we don't have to change the colors, fortunately. So we need whatever the number is. It's 24 of the graphics, 8 of the color, 8 of the size. All of this is going on in a 4K ROM, and that's not a lot of memory. The average icon on your iPhone is 75K or something.
Yeah, 75K.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's 15 of our games or something like that. So we had to do things all, very carefully. And so now how do I can stop? No. Oh, space is the thing that moves it forward.
Aha.
So how do I pause?
Just hit the
There's
play
a pause.
button.
I see the pause button up there.
Yeah.
There's no pause in Atari.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
All right. Play. Play. Play.
So were all of the cartridges 4K?
No, some were 2K, some were 4K, and later in life, some were 8K.
Did it cost more to get the bigger?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. They all had an incremental cost.
All right. So here we go. If you're doing one of the longer Grand Prix races, you are going to encounter these narrow bridges. Okay, now these are bridges over water. I told you the Atari does a really nice blue. Well, we use the real nice blue for water. And I told you that I am anal about making black borders between color changes. And the horizontal color changes are really very easy. All I have to do is turn the background color black and wait a line, okay? Putting a leading edge on the water was 10 times harder. That's actually the missile object. It's a 1-bit object positioned in the right place and drawing in black color. And it's the missile object for the player object that is the enemy cars, because otherwise it would change color. If my red car was up high, that line would be black, black, white, red, blue, 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 instead of black. So it's the other object's missile. So it got positioned in order to make this movement possible. And as you see, when I continue, it moves very smoothly. Now, that's even hard because
That's even harder.
the blue is made out of those playfield objects, those playfield bits that are 4 pixels per bit. And you see the water moving at 1 pixel resolution. Okay, it is moving smoothly at 1 pixel resolution. Well, how do we do that? Well, that's where the ball object comes in. The ball object, just like the player missiles are the color of the player, the ball object happens to be the color of the playfield. Okay, very convenient for me for this. And the ball object can be 8 pixels wide. It can be 1, 2, 4, or 8 pixels wide because Joe DeKeer said, I can just add this couple gates here and I can make that happen. So he added these little features, not knowing if they were ever going to be used. So I'm going to show with this video, this is the playfield. If you watch that blue playfield, when I need to, I add a pixel, 4 of them. I add 4 pixels by adding 1 bit. And then I add it again, and I add it again, and I add it again. So you will see the edge of that blue jutting over 4 pixels. Every 4 pixels that I have to move, it juts over, okay? And then I made transparent or translucent the ball object, which is covering up the edge that changes like that. So am I losing anybody yet here?
Did you actually go into the old code and do this?
I don't remember.
I
how
think he
made it.
simulated it.
Okay, I thought so.
So I'm going to go back to the previous slide, if I can. And do we know what's going on here?
There's a play button down the lower left.
Okay. All right. So that's why it's smooth. Because the ball object can move at 160 pixel resolution where the playfield goes in chunks. So now you've seen it again.
So that's called mask. You're masking the edge so that it looks smooth.
You want to explain how hard it is to do that alone without the mask?
Without the mask, without this car that has to exist across all stripes.
Well, to make this even more interesting, actually, what he's not mentioning here too is that the playfield registers are arranged like a serpentine. It's like a snake, so they're non-linear. You've got some bits that go this way, some bits that go that way,
Yep.
and come back again.
They copied or reflected.
They're even worse that they're copied and reflected.
Yeah.
So he has to, every scan line, dump all of those playfield registers with new data so they're not symmetrical or copied.
Unlike where you take the cartridge out and you see these vertical stripes, the playfield would show up as vertical stripes that are duplicated or reflected.
Yes.
So if whatever I put in over here, I have to turn off over here, all during a single scan line of the TV scan.
You've got 76 cycles to do it.
So this is the guy. And I didn't play very well here, but then there's some other fun things. Is you crash into the screen, into a guy, well, turn the gray red and make a noise. All right, makes for a nice collision. And one of the things that I put in the game are the occasional oil slick, which is really funny because it throws you around. And yes, you've been there. And it crashes you into other cars. But what you'll notice is at some point during the later levels, you end up seeing a lot of oil slicks. See all those oil slicks? Notice they're black? Okay. The code is looking at your play and saying there's a bridge coming up. And I'm going to need to make a line on the playfield, and I'm going to need it to be black. So I need to have no cars, no opponent cars. They all stop coming, and these all run away, so that I can have that to do that line.
All for that silly little black line.
line. Okay?
It's very creative.
Basically, what you need to understand at this point is any normal programmer would be taking a hose, attaching it to the tailpipe on his car, and running it into his house. Dave is not any programmer, so he decided to actually do all this.
It gets worse. You can keep a car on the screen
That's actually my favorite thing
by
to do
bashing into
in the
it.
whole game. It's my favorite thing
And I'm
to
pretty
do.
sure I captured it in this video. Poor guy.
I don't remember what happened.
Don't let the car get past you.
What's in the brakes?
Yes, and you want to
Well,
try to force him to be there. when the
Remember
brakes
that
come.
to simulate the motion, you're moving those guys based on their speed relative to you. So you got stopped, which is why the green car went forward, and then the green car goes back. So with this one,
Yeah. Look, he wants to leave.
I
but
just
he can't
lined up
leave.
behind this car, and he bumps me, makes me go back, and then he goes forward. But at some point, I have to get him off the screen, or I can't put that little black line on
And
it.
he just slams on his brakes. I'm not moving.
That's funny. I love it. Now I want to go home and play this game.
I know. It's a
And-
great game.
And what is almost more amazing is we did all this back in the day using graph paper. We would take a piece of graph paper and we would color in a box, and that's a pixel. And then I have to say, oh, well, wait a minute. I'm using 2 pixels per bit, so I have to draw 2 boxes or 4 boxes. And trying to figure out how to create that car, and it slowly built up out of, okay, it's this guy, and look at this. This is cool because the front tire looks just like the middle part of the back tire, so I don't have to change the graphics or whatever, duplicate it. And anyway, we did all that, all doing it on graph paper. And all the time wanting to say, I wish we could make a tool. And with that tool, make it easier to make graphics. But we were just too busy making new games. We're under pressure. We had to have a certain new game by Christmas every year and such. But when we decided to do Audacity Games, we spent 3 years working on this before we announced that there's going to be a game coming out. And one of the things, and we did a lot of things. We had to create new plastic. We created an injection molded plastic tool. We had to figure out how to do, we want to do everything as well as was done in the past. We did the boxes and the manuals and the beautiful labels and then the patches and all those kinds of things. But we also built some tools.
How big is the final cartridge?
Well, that's an interesting problem. I designed the circuit board and actually I did the injection molding tool as well. I wear a lot of hats in this company. And I went out and I said, all right, maybe we'll do 32K or whatever. So I went out sourcing parts. Smallest ROM I could buy was 128K. The smallest ROM anyone would sell me was 128K bytes. They just don't make the small ones. Oh, actually, you can buy a 4K ROM. Like if you've got some military, some satellite thing, you got to go up to the satellite and fix it, and it had a 4K ROM in it. You can buy one, but it's $10,000. I mean, they'll make you one. But to get,
And the carts would have been too expensive.
yeah, to get a production ROM. So we have 32 4K banks in these games. And so, yeah, that helps a little bit.
That is a hell of a lot. You're not worried about memory with something like the Snake.
Not worried about ROM memory. Still only
ROM
128 bytes of RAM.
when you have 32 4K
It's
banks.
not a 4K game.
No. It's not an 8K, it's not a 16K. So Dan is now going to take us through.
Is this part 3?
Yes.
Part 3, you can turn on.
Obviously, this is one of the largest sprites.
You guys need to change seats.
Well,
Because-
Garry can hit the button for me.
Oh, okay.
I'll hit the button.
And one caveat we have to say is Dan did this on graph paper before joining our company. He didn't get the benefit of this tool.
Right. He created this screen before that. We all know this wonderful game, which has gotten rave reviews from the public. We're very proud of the reviews it's gotten. My favorite one is a very esteemed, well-known game designer who will go unnamed. Posted something. He's one of my friends on one of the social medias, and he said, "It's finally the weekend. Working my tail off. I have the newest PS5 game that I've been waiting to play. Why am I sitting here and playing Casey's Gold for 5 hours?" He says the answer is I can't stop. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel.
So I'm going to take you through one of the biggest sprites in the game, and one of the things I did early on was my locomotive. Always wanted to do a train game, and that means that you need to do the whole train, and the locomotive is obviously the most challenging part. So as Dave mentioned earlier, we have this playfield, and there's all the playfield columns But if it was copied or reflected, you'd see two cabs, or you'd see cab and some of the structure, and a cab and some of the structure. So what Dave had to do for the bridge in Grand Prix, and what I had to do here, and this is a little easier because it's not moving horizontally on the screen, is I had to change those registers at various intervals as the raster went across from the H blank, started on the left side of the screen, and then had to change those registers as the raster went to the right side of the screen. So what I did first is I put together on graph paper what I thought would be the essence of the locomotive. You can hit that, Garry. And I then wanted to do a smokestack. Now, I didn't really have the ability to do really fancy sprites that were overlaid because I had Casey as one of the sprites. So I only had one sprite left. Casey could jump on the roof and be on the same scan line as the smokestack. So I created a very simple smokestack, which wasn't H-moved or magnified or in any way. But that was just an 8-bit image that I was able to put there at the top before the code ran into the playfield for the engine. You can hit that, Garry. Thanks.
Just go.
Beep, beep, okay. And then I wanted to put some color in, but obviously a black locomotive doesn't have a whole lot of color. So that made my life easy too. I didn't have a whole big color table to change as the raster went down the screen. So I added a simple roof on there that Casey could jump on and run on. Beep. And so now I started to do the harder part. So I needed to do a carriage part, and I wanted to simulate what an old-time locomotive had, which was a piston system. So I created one frame of it in graph paper, and then had to figure out how am I going to actually move that piston back and forth, and it does it in four pixel intervals, and be able to change that. And I don't recall exactly what that's called in a locomotive, but if you watch it, it actually goes down and up every scan line, and that goes up and down as the piston goes back and forth, so it really looks like it's pulling it and pulling those wheels.
It's a linkage.
A linkage, thank you.
Like that.
And then the cow catcher was very simply done by using alternating blocks or bits of playfield. Beep. Thank you. So I did create the multiple frames of the pistons and had to overlay them at the bottom of the screen. But now I don't have any wheels. And I'm already doing a lot of work here with non-symmetrical animating playfield. Beep.
Right. The thing we really haven't mentioned in any of this is every time you say, yeah, but I could do that if I shift, or I could do this if I change new size, or I could do this if I change color. Every time you add one of those, you only got 76 cycles. So you go from having, oh, I'm going to do this stuff, or this stuff, or this stuff, or this stuff, or this stuff. And at some point, you're not going to store everything every time on one line and get away with it. So that's what's the miracle.
Just the playfield is 6 writes that are a minimum 7 cycles each. So 42 cycles is used up just to make the playfield be different on the right side than it is on the left side.
Right.
So that's 42 out of 76.
Except in Donkey Kong when I did the non-symmetrical playfield.
Ramps, yeah.
If you look at the game carefully, you'll notice that I don't use the furthest playfield out on either.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, right.
Well, because the arcade game isn't wide, it's more tall.
And I don't use that either here.
So it's a little cheat. So I don't actually store
So you only have to do
playfields.
4 rights.
I only had to do 4.
4 rights.
But those are the questions we ask ourselves every single day.
Yeah.
What can I do to get...
I mean, you lay in bed at 4 in the morning going, wait a minute. There's only 1 pixel on either edge that's overlapping into the other playfield. Just shove it a little bit and it'll be fine.
That's
Can't
exactly
do that
right.
with a QR code, by the way.
Yeah.
And then I started very simply, this had to go on the track. So I already had the track kernel laid out. And the thing about the track kernel, which was interesting, is as these guys had mentioned, that we have the ability to take a player and copy it once or twice. So you have 3 planes, or 1 plane, 2 plane, 3 planes. But the wheels on the trains, I actually get 8 of them. So I have 8 wheels instead of just 6, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I do a little, that isn't shown here in the locomotive, but in the boxcars, I actually am able to put 8 wheels on the screen, and I can do that by doing a trick to hit the reposition register at various times along the scan line to fake the machine to say stick another 1 or 2 objects that shouldn't be there, and that allowed me to do 8 non-flashing or non-flickering solid wheels underneath all of the cars. But for the engine, it was hard because you had to do these 2 big wheels and then you had to do 2 little wheels. So what I actually did was I took player 1 and I copied it in its most extreme distance and did the same with player 2 and lined them up. But then I realized, well, I can write this data and that can be copied here, so these 2 wheels can be identical, but then before the raster gets to the little one, I've got to change the data here, and I did that for the little wheel, and then I do it again for player 2, and fortunately the wheels were all gray, so I didn't need to do color. So what looks somewhat complicated gets even more complicated because all that's happening at the exact same time I'm changing those 4 registers to make the pistons and the linkage looks like it's moving. So you can hit the next one. Thank you. And then I wanted to do the smoke. And we had various ideas of putting objects that would move and things that would flicker and whatnot. And I thought, geez, the easiest thing to kind of do would be to take one object, and that's what that is, and change the H move and new size every scan line and stretch it way out. And then change the color, but change the color in a way that the color repeats in shades of black to white, and then run it through and let it loop. And it really gives the illusion that smoke is moving up and away. And you'll see right there. And that's the actual finished locomotive for Casey's. And if it appears on the title page, and it appears if you move to the extreme right of every train, you'll jump onto the locomotive.
And that's the answer to the question of how you do this stuff.
Is the 0514 significant of anything?
It is. It's actually the date I met my current wife partner. May 14th.
I thought it'd be cool.
And if anything bad ever happens with that, we're going to have to pull
all the ROMs and change it.
Change the number.
The first game, Circus Convoy, we announced that we were making new games for the Atari 2600 one day in 20.
Right. And then you had all the haters going, yeah, right. Yeah, sure. It's going to be 2 years. We're not going to see anything, right? It was all over the internet.
7 days later, we launched.
Right. But we had it all done when we made the announcement.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to be the guys who do the, fake releases.
There's a term in the software industry called vaporware.
Yes. We didn't want to be vaporware.
Speak to that one.
Yes. We're all familiar with vaporware.
But, we were printing the manual long in advance, far in advance, and so it ended up in there. And it's ironic, we went to a trade show after that, and somebody says, when's your next game coming out? And it's, what's your next game going to be? Don't you read the manuals?
And there were like this many people in the room. I said, let me ask a question. Did anybody read the Casey's Gold Manual? And they all look at me like, what? I said, the manual, you bought the game. Did you read the manual? No. I said, did you know that on the last page of the manual, we tell you what his next game is? They're like, what?
So anyway, it will be out this year. I'm putting final touches on it now. The game takes place in basically 4 phases. The backstory is your mini sub is with your friends in it are stuck in Shark Grotto, which is just past Poseidon's Gate, which were the boulders that you saw them climb over. And you have this suit that has air in it, and tanks are dropped. And they stay at a particular level, and you try to get to the next tank before your air runs out, collecting treasures and such. You get to the sea floor, 100 fathoms down, and now the gameplay changes. It's actually very interesting. I don't think it's ever been done before. Is you have to hop. So you have to compress your knees and spring up, and you only get a certain amount of height. And then you come back down, and you have to learn how to move in hops. And you work your way all the way over to the Poseidon's Gate, Shark Grotto. You kill all the sharks. You release your mini sub. Now you have to go all the way back every screen you just went through left to right, you now go through right to left. Work your way all the way back to the anchorage of your USS Poseidon, and you have to climb all the way back to the surface on that chain to win the game. So, and in an experiment, which currently is in the game, it may not release that way, I don't know, but we got some feedback from people with, you might love the long gameplay like Casey's Gold. You know, like the guy he was talking about who was playing it for 5 hours. There's some people love that kind of gameplay. Other people who say, I just want, I want to have smaller experiences. So I've actually broken it into, there is a practice mode, and you can play the descent, you can play the seafloor, you can play kill the sharks, and you can play climb the chain individually. And you don't get scores for that, but you can actually practice each of those 4 segments as much as you want, and then you play the whole game and you're lowered into the water as you saw in the first video. So.
Now, show of hands, how many people think that's a good idea versus keeping it all hidden and disclosing it? And what about the other ones? People who don't think that's necessary or needed.
It's cool to be able to access the other levels because if you're not very good at it or can't plan or whatever.
Right.
I think I'd want to be known ahead of, since, like maybe in the manual it would say, hey, by the way, if you want the full experience, as long as it's in the manual, maybe.
From their story, people aren't reading
The manual that nobody reads?
No, but I actually try to make that clear when you're selecting the practice
it's
mode,
on
it
the
says very
opening
clearly,
screen.
It says you cannot submit score if you're practicing.
Right.
I
And-
think it looks great.
Make it a hidden option menu after you go down too many times.
Did this start as the kernel of this idea start with just the title, or did you have a technical challenge you wanted to meet, or?
That diver is the most complicated sprite I have ever created in a game, bar none.
It looks amazing.
And I mean, it's multiple colors. It's got a harpoon that it can shoot. It's got all of those things happening, and all that's being written in code that's only got 76 cycles in a scan line, and I got to have all those other objects out there as well. So it was just, I thought, this is kind of cool. I created the guy.
And it may not even be final graphics on the guy.
He wants to touch the graphics.
I have some touch-ups that I've done that I think look better, and I have to get them by the boss here,
Do you guys ever fight when you're working on these like a rock band or something?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the biggest problem is how much information do we release how soon? We always...
Yeah, we have different feelings on that. I would never tell anybody about any of this until it's 2 days away from shipping. But somehow or other, somebody made the idea to put it in that manual.
It wasn't me.
It must have been you.
Oh, I don't think so.
I took what you had in there and I changed the text. I fixed it, but...
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But that means you were complicit.
Of course I was complicit.
I would have never done it.
Now, the joke is that I was the extreme opposite end talking about Casey's Gold in 2018.
Right.
It took 5 years to get it done.
Right. We
Which
don't want
we will not
to
do
go
again.
there again.
But there is some debate whether we'd like to let people know that something is coming to generate some buzz before it's available.
I mean, I have a game I think is very nice.
Your current game?
Yes, and I would love to talk to people about it.
But you can't.
But I will not.
And you need to finish that.
And I'm going to finish it.
Damn right.
that's the
because
thing,
it's a
is we-
great game and it's fun.
We will not give you a release date until the game is finished and through testing. But we can tell you that it's coming because the amount of work that went into Poseidon's Gate, it's going to go out over his dead body.
That's it exactly. Yeah. So we have 2 other games that are well in development. So just want to let you know we're not done.
We're not sitting on our butts.
Yeah.
I'm racing to try to get another game done within 5 years. I assure you. This will be next year, I assure you.
We were actually at a conference and Garry let slip that we've got Dan's, Casey's Gold will be out this year. That was 2 years ago.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And the guy said, "Is it definitely going to be out next year?" I said, "I guarantee it."
Yeah.
And I was off by, I think, 2 years.
And the reason for that was it changed.
Yeah,
We got to the end of the game and we said,
it's not good
we
enough.
can make this better.
Yeah.
This has got to get better. We spent 3 years on Circus Convoy, in part
You wanna
because
talk
we're
about that?
building a company and we're building...
You can.
tools
It's
and
a
building
private
stuff.
little, yeah.
But
And we are working on other things, by the way. I'll just let you know.
that's Casey's Gold running on an iPhone.
Right now,
Now the question is,
it plays really well.
how many of you would buy that versus the 2600, or would you buy both?
Both.
I would.
Yeah.
I think that people always want to play the games on the original system, regardless of what else is available.
Yeah, we've been trying to decide what to do with it. It's fully playable. We've been trying to decide whether we use it as a promotional item, maybe we just have a few levels and we upsell to the cartridge, or some of us think that you're not going to hurt the sales of one with the other because it's
money on the table if you don't do both. And here's the reason why. I have two Atari 2600s, and I even have one that's modded to do S video, so I can play it on a slightly more like I can get like in. But I just think there's a lot of friction. There's a lot of friction to using original hardware. But
Yep.
it's and here's the thing too. Like I have put that controller in my daughter's hand. She will not play it. I put her in front of an iPad. She'll play anything.
Of course.
So I'm saying is that like eventually we're all going to die, and I want my daughter to play these cool games and experience this thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so morbid there. I'm just saying.
No, you're right.
I want the love of these type of games to continue. So like if I could buy that for her iPad, I would buy it. Now I wouldn't pay $60. I'll pay $60 for that.
No, of course.
I won't pay
And that
$60.
wouldn't be
We
the
wouldn't
model.
charge you that.
But yeah, I would buy it 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting. I have triplets that are 24 years old, and the two boys are real big game players. And they look at the 2600 and they walk by and they snicker and okay. So,
Man, Dad, that's so lame.
yeah, Dad. These people care about what Dad and Dave do. I have no idea why, but that's cute. But I walked in the room and I showed them this.
Yeah.
And they were like, holy cow! Like suddenly, it's on an iPhone now. Now you're talking.
The gentleman back there had a question.
Yeah. So what I found as somebody who is a Dreamcast homebrew developer is that a lot of people respond better if you can both sell I usually what I do is I sell a PC version of the game, a PC port of the game, but then I also have a ROM that people could download. And on the opposite end, I also have when people buy the physical copy of the game, they get a download code as well for the Steam version. And I mean, that's just a suggestion I have, but based on my experience, that's...
Yeah. The only problem with that is Apple has all these rules about, I don't think we could generate revenue outside of the Apple Store and then give a code to go download something in the Apple Store without Apple getting money. Because they'll say, hey, we hosted it. We sent the bits out. You don't go make money somewhere else with those bits.
Yeah, those are all issues that we're.
So we got to figure it out.
We're figuring it
But
out.
we're just curious to see what people's thoughts are.
I actually come from the opposite one. My nephews love the retro stuff. They love playing it on modern hardware, but when they see the physical copy or boxes for the original system, even if they never play it, they have to have it. Just to say, I have this. Look at this.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, we were founded on the boxes, the manuals, the patches, on all the physical stuff. This is really deviating from what our mission is. But I had a few hours. I just had to try it. And, we haven't figured out yet what we're going to do with it.
I mean, again, like I understand again, I think you're hardcore. It's not even hardcore fans. I think you will not have a problem moving those.
Right.
You're not looking to sell, 100. I mean, it'd be great to sell 100,000 copies of those.
Yeah, I don't think there are 100,000 people alive.
But so selling I think on your thing, it's like a run of 2,000. Selling 2,000 of that, I think easy.
Yeah.
And then I think selling 100,000 copies of that on the iPhone, again, like I said, I really think you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah. You're probably right. What's Hardy think? You know something about games.
Where's John? I don't even see John. Where's John Hardy? I can't see him. Oh, there he is.
I think it's exploring.
Worth exploring, yeah.
The biggest issue is being how to get recognized.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, with any iPhone game, it's discoverability.
We have a lot of experience in the iPhone. I mean, we had 3 games in the top 10 when the iPhone came out in the App Store.
And we've had 7 iPhone games that went to number 1 in the App Store.
Yeah.
So we know the iPhone.
But we also know how crowded it's gotten.
It's gotten really crowded, but, I
mean, it used to be that you could charge $60 per game.
Never on the iPhone.
Never on the iPhone.
No, I'm just saying, before the iPhone. It used to be that people actually paid for the quality, for
the time.
We could all have salaries,
Right.
And the world has changed, and now there's billions of apps on the App Store.
You haven't gotten over that one kid.
Yeah.
Who wrote in and said, it was all right, but it was too expensive at 99 cents. And Dave said, you can get an order of fries for more than that.
Look,
You're telling me that my games...
God bless Steve Jobs for what he did, but he did...
Spent a year on that game with 3 other professionals sitting beside me, and it's not worth the cost of a...
Steve Jobs did strike a big blow to the game industry when he introduced games for 99 cents, and then, it's for free, and you've got to earn money.
Well, in fact, before freemium, we actually... we were sticking to our guns. We're $1.99 only. It's never going to be below $1.99.
Damn it.
Yep.
And somebody in the marketing department said, all right, well, for a month, let's put it at one of these at 99 cents and see if we sell more than we did at $1.99. We sold one more. Twice plus one.
Yeah, twice plus one. So,
twice plus one, so everything went to 99 cents.
Well, and then we finally said we got to hear it from the mouth of God. So we set up a meeting. We flew to Apple. We went to One Infinite Loop, their headquarters, went and sat down with one of the people high up in the App Store. We explained who we were. We said, look, we have this game, World Cup Table Tennis, and it's really doing well, and it's $1.99. What can you tell me about going to 99 cents? What does that do? Any statistic? And she sits there and she's like, and I said, you see all these games come by. What's the, what have you learned? She goes, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I asked for my airline ticket price back on that. Do you remember that? And we just looked at each other like, what the hell are you talking about?
I saw this reaction coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of shovelware in the iPhone, which is...
It's so much of it. So much of it. It's unbelievable.
World Cup Table Tennis Lite. Is that you?
Yes, that was us. Yes.
There's one guy I recently learned actually changed both Nintendo's, PS4, Sony's, and Microsoft's policy because when he accidentally set the sales settings, he set it to 1 cent, and he made over $150,000. And it got to the point where they weren't making any money off less than half a cent.
Right, 30% of 1 cent.
And so they had to change their terms and conditions for all their stuff.
To a minimum?
Yeah, to a minimum.
That's funny.
You had a question, the gentleman in the white? Yes.
So I'm kind of curious. I've heard the stories of development times back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s for a lot of these titles, even 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever it may be, depending on the deadlines. How are the three of you working together now? Do you actually kind of set your own goal line for these, or is it just when you feel like it's ready, you're going to announce it and put it out? How are you working your own time?
Yeah, we have worked for venture capitalists. We have worked for public companies. We have worked for private companies. And we are way too old and seasoned for anybody in a suit to tell us any date when a game has to go out. Yes. So we work on these until we go, it's perfect. There's nothing more we want to add. And it doesn't matter whether it's the day before Christmas, the day after Christmas, or the middle of the summer, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we will not shove a game out there for any reason except if we think it's great. That's it.
What makes a game fun? Anybody?
The gameplay?
You keep coming back.
Yeah, easy to play, hard.
Yeah. Buzzwords.
Question is,
Figuring
hard
out
to
what
define.
makes a game fun is really very challenging. If we could define it, we could,
Bottle it.
Bottle it. These games are developed through iteration. Take Pitfall for example. I wrote the code so that it had a path with some trees, and then I put the Pitfall Harry character up there, and I'm doing all these things. And you write code, and then you look at the screen. Yes, it worked. No, it didn't. Fix it. Yes, it works. So you're doing this iteration day in, day out. 50 times to at least 20 times a day.
And every time you're doing it, you're adding the most minuscule little necessary thing that has to go in for it to be a game.
So I hold the joystick to the right, the guy runs to the left. I said, that's a bug. All right, go back to the code, you fix it. Now he runs to the right. Well, each time you're doing that, you're actually grabbing the controller and playing it after a certain point, after the display's all up there. And, so we're playing the game short snippets 20 times a day just to debug what we've just put in. And Garry had an epiphany about 20 years ago when he figured out something that was happening during that process.
Yeah, and it really meant something because it really happened to me once. I had this game I was working on, adding this, adding this, adding this, adding this, changing this, adding this. Test worked next. Test worked next. One time, I put down the joystick and I said, I tested that for like 30 minutes. And that was it. That was the moment I knew it was fun. Because I played because I was playing and I was having fun. I wasn't playing to make sure the guy that was going left when I pushed the joystick to the left. And at that moment I said, that's the light bulb. That's the light bulb when you go, I have injected fun into this title. And you know what? You don't get it every time. And if you don't, you shouldn't put the goddamn game out.
And after 50 years of doing this, the other thing is you learn is you're actually pretty good at figuring out why.
Yes, that's right.
And so I'll be playing a game and I say, this is not fun. But if I did X, Y, and Z, I'll bet it would be fun. And so I implement that and it helps.
Yep.
And so you have to have some intelligence at what you're doing to try to guide it toward being fun. And fun is an interesting thing. I mean, Rob Fulop, another industry guy, he said, I can make a game hard. You come into a room, there's a wizard sitting there, and he says, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and a million. Tell me what it is, and you may pass. That's a hard game. But what you're really trying to do is make it challenging and rewarding, and make the combination all work out. And we're good at what we do, and it shows. But
and the other thing is, we're good at what we do. None of these games would be as good as they are if it wasn't for the three of us together. Because we each play each other's games, and we make 100 changes to the games because Dan played it and said, this was too hard. I can't get past that. I tried to get past it. I couldn't get past it.
Yeah, but everybody said Pitfall was hard, too. It was not hard.
David has a screen with triple crabs coming down, and I'm trying to get past them as I'm coming down the water. And I said, I can't get past those goddamn crabs. And I tried for like 6 hours. You tried too.
Yep.
And he fixed it. Just made the slightest change to it. And I played it one day and I could get past them. Now, it's that sort of feedback that keeps you from being frustrated. If you pick up the game and play it and go, I can't get past the goddamn crabs. So we just play and play and play, and we come up with ideas that we all have egos and grudgingly say, no, I'm not going to do that. But then go back and sleep on it and go, yeah.
And then to answer the original question, with no deadlines.
No deadlines. Never a deadline. Never a deadline.
What about Alien Abduction? That's not one of you three. Is that
John Van Ryzen?
Was that handled any differently in terms of you guys playing that as well?
Yes, but we did play the hell out of it. He came to us with it. We called him and said, what are you doing? He said, we're retired. We said, get your ass up out of the chair and do something useful, for God's sakes. So he did it, and he is a hard man to take feedback. That's not John. What the fuck is his favorite phrase? And I apologize for saying that. But that John has his own mind. But we did give him feedback, and we played it. And Dave spent a particular amount of time working with John, and we got it to where we liked it.
Dave actually implemented some of our feedback because John didn't want to implement some of the feedback.
And then we gave it to a lot of our testers and said, we're trying to figure this out. What do you think? And to a person, they came back and said, we really like it. It's really hard. And if you like a really hard game, you like that game. So it may not be our taste. It was too hard for me, but they really liked it.
Hero is widely considered to be one of the best 2600 games ever made.
Yep. Yeah.
And this is the spiritual successor to Hero, and it's Hero in space.
And Hero was done in our office. He didn't do that in the vacuum. He was sitting at the cubicle next to me the entire time. And we worked with him and played it, and it came out great because he had to impress us and the guys on the West Coast. And he had to really push the envelope, and he did. So, we will do games with other people, as long as they can achieve the quality we want, no matter how long it takes.
I searched forever to find a copy of Hero, and I finally did. And I think even just a year or two ago, I finally got it. And I think I paid $60 for it. My wife raised her eyebrow.
Wow.
And I show her all the time. I'm like, honey, that game's now worth over $100.
Yeah.
But I sit there and I play it. It's a great game.
It's not worth over $100 because you're never going to part with it.
No, never. It'll end up in a Goodwill or an estate sale.
Try getting the Hero patch. Try to buy that.
Oh, yeah.
That one, right, John? That one's a few $100.
I have to ask you a question. My friend down in Houston who couldn't make it up is going to kill me. And I agree with this question. I mean, I agree, at least from my point of view. There was an Atari Activision lawsuit. And as a member of the game industry, I'm thankful it played out the way it did. I think the history was changed. At least, again, I wasn't there. Maybe it wasn't that serious. Maybe it was serious. But this lawsuit, when it happened, do y'all want to explain it probably better than I can? I guess what I'm curious is, what he wants to know is, were y'all ever asked to sell? Was there ever a temptation to quit? How did y'all push through that and win that?
Well, it was only this guy. We hadn't joined Activision yet, so we weren't involved.
So at Atari, I'll try to be somewhat brief. We found out that the four of us who lunched together were kind of a clique. Had been responsible for 60% of Atari's revenues in the past year, and Atari had made $100 million in revenues, and we were making $25,000 salaries. And we said, look, you've got 65 people in this department, and the four of us are responsible for 60% of your sales. We must be doing something right. We must be good at this. And the guy said, don't even use the word royalty. We went to talk to the president, You're no more important to us than the guys on the assembly line who put them together, because if they didn't put them together, we wouldn't sell any, right? That was his logic.
All part of the team.
Yeah. And we were anonymous creators in the lab, and we said, look, what we're doing is a creative product. We should get credit like authors of a book. And we should get some financial credit if we do really well. If we don't do really well, then fine. A basic salary without some, if there's no bonus because the sales weren't good, then there would be no bonus. Great. They wouldn't even consider it. And as we left the president's office, the senior vice president walked us out and he shook our hand and he said, it's been nice knowing you guys, because that was not
the future.
That was not the answer I know you were looking for. But so we left Atari, and we left with just the shirts on our backs. And in California and pretty much everywhere probably, you cannot be prohibited from pursuing your craft. If you're good at something and you're doing it, you can do it at any company. There's no way that you can be controlled.
But California is notably much
better,
more employee positive on that front.
It means non-competes are illegal.
It is against the law to have a non-compete in California.
So we went to an IP attorney, and he said, if you don't take anything out, this is what it's going to be. We went to our venture capitalists and say, you're funding Activision, put an extra 40 grand into there for legal budget, and we're gonna be sued. We're gonna have to defend the lawsuit. And because I was the one who reverse engineered the hardware for the new company, I was the first one deposed. And after about 9 questions, The ninth question being, did you receive any counsel before you left the company to do this? And I said, yes, we spoke to Aldo Test, who was the most famous IP attorney in the entire Bay Area at the time. And he said, you spoke to Aldo, huh? Yeah. Did you do what he said? Yes, we did. And so the questions then started turning around into, and you didn't like take any manuals out or anything, did you? I said, no, of course we didn't. You know, he was just asking the questions. He was feeding me the answers so that he could get out of there because we didn't do anything wrong. And anyway, it still went through all the discovery and it went to trial and such. And it ended up settling for an undisclosed amount. And Jim Levy, the CEO who signed the settlement, came to 4 of us, the designers, and said, you guys want to know? And you're not allowed to talk about it. So I said, if I'm not allowed to talk about it, I don't even want to know. So it was just some settlement. Somebody paid somebody. And it didn't affect us in any way. Activision was from 0 to $60 million in revenues in a year. With 60 employees, we did 60 million in revenues and built up to like 350 million in 2 or 3 years. Fastest growing company in Silicon Valley. Prior to Compaq, yeah. So yeah, it had really no effect. But Atari, they had no realization that it was helping them, because if you have a console and you get support from other people, it's actually better for you to have more people supporting your standard. Our first trade show, Atari took out a full-page ad that says, we disagree with anyone who would leave a company and steal company trade secrets and all this kind of stuff. They didn't mention us by name. And I remember Levy reading it and he said, it's all true. I agree with that too. I'd say that too. We disagree with anybody doing all those illegal things. We didn't do any of them. So yeah, it was a complete non-issue, except we had to pay some legal fees. And after that, they finally learned. I mean, everybody's heard of Activision at this point, but we created Activision with a couple of founding principles. One was that a designer should get credit for his creative work in a video game in the same way that author of a book would get credit, or a movie, or whatever. And 2, that you don't have to own or sell a console to make video games for a console. We became the first third-party publisher of video game software. And first party is Sony makes games for the Sony system, and back then Mattel made games for their Intellivision system. Atari made it for the Atari system, their first party. We became the first third-party publisher. And I was speaking to 600 people at Game Developers Conference a few years back, and I said, how many people work for a third-party publisher? Everybody. Except for the guys in Sony who's standing against the wall over there. They didn't raise their hands because they make games for Sony, because they're at Sony. So yeah, the answer to the question is, it was never a question. I mean, I remember Levy he told his mother about it, his aged mother, that he was sued for $40 million. And she said, $40 million? That would break you, wouldn't it? And I said, yeah, of course it would, but we did nothing wrong,
Question back there?
Yeah, actually, when I think about the beginnings of Activision, the commercials always come to mind, and at the end, developed by.
Yep.
That always struck me as a major thing.
Yeah, it was.
Did that make you rock stars in the game world, or how did that affect you personally?
It made us rock stars to, 8 to 13-year-olds.
It's worse than that. It's 12-year-old boys.
12-year-old boys. That was it. I remember I moved into a new neighborhood, didn't buy a mansion. I just bought a house. And I move in, and maybe I'm in there for a week, and I roll my garbage can down to the street. And there's a kid next door who's maybe 14 years old. And he comes over and says, hi, I live, I'm Jason, I live 2 doors down. And I said, okay, nice to meet you. And I go to walk away. He goes, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. He said, did you know you have the same name as a famous video game designer? And I said, no, I didn't know that. Well, Becky.
I want to just give you an anecdote.
All right.
I remember when I was 8 years old, there was in that age bracket, and I went to the store and I saw a brand new game called Fishing Derby, but it didn't say Atari. So I was afraid that this may not work on my Atari, even though it said so. And I actually called the customer service line at Atari, and the person there said, if you put that cartridge in your Atari, it will void your warranty.
That's great.
They tried every underhanded thing they could do.
That's great.
They told our distributors that if they carried Activision, they wouldn't be given games from Atari. You know, they did all those underhanded things.
That is fabulous.
I think you may have.
I remember the phone conversation because she says, "Oh no, if you even put that thing in your cartridge machine, we will void your warranty. Your Atari will break. It's so. Please don't do that. It's not."
Dan and I had a similar thing. I went to the store and I saw this game Skiing, and I took it home, and I called Dan. I said, "You got to come over." A bunch of morons put out a game for the Atari. Can you imagine anybody doing a game besides Atari? It's got to be the biggest piece of junk I've ever seen. Dan comes running over. We sit there in front of the TV, got our popcorn ready to start laughing. Turn it on and go, what the hell? It was a hell of a good game.
Similar experience, but since you asked whoever asked the question, it was really kind of rewarding to go and see our games in the store the first time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So we heard from our distributor that they had just sold to this little company called Electronics Boutique that happened to be in Valco Fashion Center, right? And we go and we walk in and we see, and he is unpackaging. I mean, what do they call it on YouTube now? The
Unveiling.
Unboxing video. He is cutting open the box and he's pulling it open. And he'd opened one of them. There was the catalog. Catalog shows what other games we're selling, and on the back was our pictures, right? And he was holding the catalog as we walk in his door, and he goes like this. He goes, because we were all four of us walking in together, right? And he became a lifetime friend, and you know, anytime we needed wholesale.
Well, wait, let me tell you an anecdote like that. And I just have to say this because I've spent 45 years hearing about how bad the Donkey Kong cartridge is. and every day. So, but I know a lot of people love it too, but you always have the haters, right? So I actually remember we worked on it, Dan with me in the basement of our little house in New Milford with pipes in the ceiling because it was an unfinished basement. And I finished it and I got it out. And September came. It was just like June 1st when I got it out. And I heard it was in the store. So I don't know if you remember this. You and I and maybe my wife went to Sam Goody's music because they carried video games too. And this is God's honest truth. I walk in, it's on a TV behind the register, right?
Behind the register.
There had to be 50 people around that register.
Yep.
All staring up at it, just like amazed.
We used to go to that Sam Goody's and see the games we just finished playing in public.
Yep.
On that, yeah.
And I felt so good that number one, the game was out. Number two, clearly there wasn't one person standing there who was going to turn around and say, you know, it's missing 2 levels. Nobody said that to me. They loved the game and they bought it it's a ridiculous volume. So to all the naysayers, the hell with you.
In answer to your rock star comment, I remember going to a Chicago CES in a limousine. They would take us in limousines. And I was at a light with the limousine, big black stretch with the windows open. And a car pulls up next to us and these 2 guys in there. And one guy looked at each other and said, hey, how does a punk like that get to ride in a car like that? And I looked at him, I said, I make video games. And the car sped up.
So, how much of a challenge after you broke off was it to stand up a development environment? What did you work with? I mean, did you have money to go out and buy a mainframe?
Oh, no. Well, yeah, I mean, we had budgeted for a PDP-11, but they were like on back order for months. And so...
So did I.
Yeah, so did I.
You and me both.
We used an Apple II.
So it turns out that this Hamilton Avnet, who sells circuits, chips and things, had one on their floor, and it was a 5 years old model, and it was the 11T03, and we wanted an 11/40, I think, or something is what we were trying to get, And so we placed our order for that, and then we bought the 11 TO3 right off of their counter. And that was a pain. It was running some old operating system, and then we installed a cross-assembler for 6502 that was written in Fortran.
Oh,
it was
God.
running in Fortran on the TO3.
Oh, God.
Whatever.
You hit it, assembly, and go to lunch. Come back.
And I was running Roger Wagner's 6502 assembly on the Apple II at the same time because I had just joined. Well, when I joined Activision.
He's not kidding. There was no timeshare to it.
No.
So we had switches, A-B switches. So he had to switch to A, to A, to A, to A, to
And
B.
you could run it.
So that I could edit.
It was
here at
just
the
too
end.
slow.
You would edit,
the Apple II was
edit
far
and
faster.
assemble. A 2K assembly took 30 minutes. Oh, God. A 4K assembly took an hour.
Fortran.
My follow-up question is whether your development debug cycle was better, but it doesn't sound like it was.
Just to edit and compile, that was the time.
Well, okay, I don't mean to interrupt, Dave. Sorry. But I'll step backwards. 4 years before that, when Garry was writing 4-bit microprocessor code for electronic games, when you did an edit, you'd have to burn 6 EEPROMs for one edit.
Yeah, there was no emulator.
Stick them in a board and see if it worked.
Right, but before you burned them, you actually had to enter them with
That's
data
right.
switches.
Yes.
Yep.
Switches on the front panel of the computer.
And I remember having to compute the jumps.
Yes, having to
You had
compute
to add a line in there. You would
the branches.
compute the jump. Go through the entire program, change every
If that's
jump.
going to be a 14 because I'm going to go jump it 12 and I got to go back.
It's amazing we actually did that. Right?
But it was,
TMS 1000?
Yes.
yeah, it was fun.
Great processor. Loved
Yeah.
it. And the American Microsystems S2000. Another
Now,
great one.
all that said, that was the computing side, and we waited the 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and we got our high-speed computer, and everything was much better. But we also, to make games, we used a development system, a blue box development system. You know, John's got one here in the probably in the warehouse somewhere.
Oh, it's out in the museum, I think.
Is it here?
I think it's, yeah.
And what that basically was, it was a ROM emulator that I designed and built that had an umbilical that came up and plugged into the Atari cartridge. The Atari sat on there, plugged into the cartridge port, and emulated a ROM with RAM. And then I wrote tools to be able to modify the RAM, download to it, you know, modify things. You could breakpoint, stop, change something. All of that, the development system. Bob Whitehead wrote the first
Monitor system.
monitor for it, first
Yeah.
control for it. I wrote the second. And I had to build those manually by hand. I was doing PC board layout using donuts and paper and tape, you know, and had to build all those by hand. I had to build 4 of those and make 2 games in the first 4 months of the company's business. So I was very busy.
Well, then you also were going to have Larry join you initially, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And then you had to make up the extra game.
That was the thing, is we had 4 founding game designers, and Larry Kaplan got cold feet right at the end, came back about 3 months later, but it was too late at that point. We had already promised the VCs that we would have 4 products out by Christmas. So I had to do all those development systems and do Dragster and then turn out Fishing Derby so we could have 4 to show at our first CES.
Dragster, Fishing Derby were the first 2?
They were my first 2.
Yes, what?
And then
Should we be wrapping up?
Al Miller did Checkers and
All right.
Boxing. Bob
Boxing
did
was Bob Whitehead.
which was the first H-move new size object.
Yes, it was.
That boxer.
Well, no. I thought the fish was the first one in Fishing Derby.
No, Bob did boxing, and then I had him do the shark for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did the
because he
shark.
had shown a knack for.
Didn't you skip the part where when you left Atari, you actually took physically the time and proved that you did back engineer?
I did. I had to do the full reverse engineering.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
right. We should leave at some time. If anybody wants to bring the games up to autograph, we'll do that. And if anybody wants to buy games, we're actually selling games.